This week on Mercenary Edits, we're going to give you 5 tips to make your already amazing talking head videos even more awesome. Number 1, improve your audio. The position of the microphone is probably the most important thing. The closer the better. And as a rule of thumb, you want to have your microphone pointed at your subject in this area. You want to, if you're doing a lavalier, you want to have the microphone, you want to put your thumb on your mouth and put your pinky finger here, and you want to have the lavalier in this area so that when you talk, the voice sort of comes out of your chest. That gives you the best effect. If you're using a boom microphone like I am right now, you want to have your boom right overhead and have the microphone pointing in the same area from here to here. Remember, rule of thumb. The type of microphone matters. The best microphone for interviews, in my opinion, is some sort of cardioid microphone. Whether that be hyper or super or just a regular cardioid microphone, they work great for picking up voices, and they also work great for lessening ambient noise, which is really important depending on where you're shooting. The kind of microphone matters, and this is determined on where you're shooting and what you're shooting. If you're shooting outside, you want to roll with the shotgun microphone with the dead cat. You can either have it on the camera or you can put it on the boom and the C-stand. Works great. If you're shooting a single person, you can go with an onboard shotgun or a boom. In most situations, people prefer a lavalier because, again, the closer the microphone to your subject, the better sound quality is. And nothing gets closer and less obtrusive than a lavalier. The only way I would suggest against a lavalier is if the person you're talking to is a handsy talker. If they're moving around a lot, they could possibly touch the microphone, or if they have on some sort of fabric that ruffles, that can make a sound in the mic. That is the last thing you want to hear when you get into post-production and you're working on the sound and you realize that there's a ruffling sound because this person's moving their hands a lot or they touch the microphone. That could really slow down your post-production process because you're going to have to figure out a way to fix that. If you're shooting multiple people, you're going to want to use an onboard shotgun or put a shotgun on a boom like I have here. And if you're indoors, you don't really need a dead cat. If you're outdoors, you probably want to use a dead cat. If you don't know what a dead cat is, Google it. Number 2, use music. Music creates the tone. It creates the mood for the audience. If you're shooting something triumphant, you want to use triumphant music. If you're shooting something sad, you want to use sad music. If you want something introspective, you want to use something called pensive music, which I just figured out what that was today. Feel free to Google it. Music will also allow you to cover up ambient sound. If you're in a space and the HVAC is running kind of loud and you got like a night shh in the background, you could do some work in Audition and in Premiere to kind of tone that down, but you could also lay some audio lightly up under your voice, and that'll help balance it out and you won't hear the ambient sound. Make sure you balance the volume of your music to complement the volume of your voice. A lot of times you'll watch videos online and the music will be overpowering. You can barely hear what the person is saying, or it's just so loud that it's distracting from what the person is saying. You definitely want to make sure that your music levels do not distract from what the person is saying and it's not overpowering what the person is saying. This is a rookie mistake. Number 3, use lights. Lights create visual mood, they create tone just like music does. They subliminally give the audience cues on what to expect. Sometimes you'll watch a movie, for instance, The Matrix. Everything that happens in The Matrix has a green hue. Everything that happens in the real world has a blue hue. Granted, some of this was done in post-production, I'm sure, but I also believe that they had some practical lights with gels. Lights can add visual depth to your shot. They can direct where the audience should be looking. I suggest a 3-light kit, a key, a fill, and a backlight. I'll give you the quick and dirty on a lighting kit and what those lights are and what they're used for, because I feel like if you made it this far and you're watching this video, you probably already know this. But just in case you don't, the key light is your main light, and it's going to be about 45 degrees to the left or right of your camera. This light will light the bulk of your shot. The fill light. The fill light will be on the other side of the camera, and it will be used to fill in the shadows that the key light creates. Hence the word fill in the name, fill light. Backlight. A lot of people will say you don't need a backlight. They'll say you need a key and a fill and you don't really need a backlight. Me, I'm not one of those people. I think a backlight is almost always necessary whenever you have a chance to use one, because what it does is super special. It creates a rim of light around the subject to separate them from the background. And you can see it here. On this shoulder, there's a bit of light that is separating me from the background. The backlight is right there. It's also called the hair light. You can see that my hair is a little lit. This also separates me, the subject, from the background. It also helps when you're in a tight space like I am now. I shoot against a black background because the wall is literally right here behind me. So I put up a black curtain to make it look like I'm shooting into infinite black space, and I use a backlight to create that distance between me and the background. Never, ever, 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 ever shoot directly into a light source. This will almost guarantee you a video. Number 4, use a 2-camera setup whenever possible. Whenever possible, I always suggest using a 2-camera setup. This is a good way to make your post-production process super duper smooth and avoid the dreaded jump cut. You know what I'm talking about. When the person just cuts from boom, like that. You know, I'm doing it now, and hopefully you see it. You want to avoid that as much as possible, and the best way is with a 2-camera setup. And it's best to have those cameras at 2 different focal lengths. Right now, I think I'm at 50mm on this one and the 90mm on the one in the back. So that gives me a nice little wide shot, and it gives me a tight shot to cut in and out of if I make a mistake. Now, there are situations where 2 cameras won't be the best look. Either you can't afford 2 cameras, you don't have the space for 2 cameras, or you don't have 2-camera ops. In that situation, what you want to do is you want to shoot at a higher resolution than the product will be delivered in. If you're delivering a video in 1920 by 1080, shoot at 4K, and if the subject makes a mistake, you can punch in and punch out without losing quality, and that'll also add a more dynamic look to your video, because what you want to avoid is the dreaded jump cut. You also want to avoid using a ton of transitions. That reeks of amateur hour. Number 5, pick the right location. When choosing a location, 3 things really matter: size, control, and decor. I hate to say something as cliche as size matters, but when you're choosing a location for your video, it does. You just want to make sure you, at the minimum, have enough space for the camera op, the subject you're interviewing, the person doing the interview, lighting, and sound. And another thing to consider is the distance between those things. So the rule of thumb is you want the camera at least 4 to 6 feet away from your subject, and you want your subject at least 3 to 5 feet from the background. What this does is give you the opportunity to create a shallow depth of field. This will let the background drop off and be blurry, and the subject will be nice and crisp. You want to have control of the space that you're shooting in. If you're in a space with no control, people may be walking in and out of your shots. You may not have control over noisy appliances. If you're shooting in, say, a restaurant, you may want to ask them to unplug certain things because that hum will get in the sound. Or you want to shoot in a place where you can control the overhead lighting. You may have brought a light kit in and you want to turn off those lights and shoot with your lights. If you don't have control, or they don't agree to give you control of the space, this could be difficult and it could adversely affect the finished product. Decor. This one's pretty simple. If you're shooting a mechanic, you want to shoot them in a mechanic shop. If you're shooting a teacher, shoot them in a classroom. If you're shooting a scientist, shoot them in a laboratory. Decor also helps because it lets the audience know a little more about the person you're interviewing or the person that's speaking. If you're speaking to someone who has a lengthy career in education and they've acquired all type of degrees and accolades, put those things in the background to let the audience know that this person is a aficionado on what they're talking about. And that's 5 tips from me to you on how to make your already awesome talking head videos even more amazing. As always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If I missed some, leave it in the comments. If you agree, leave it in the comments. If you disagree, leave it in the comment. If you think there's a world conspiracy on why hot dogs are sold in packages of 10 and hot dog buns are sold in packages of 8, leave it in the comments. Mercenary Edits.